North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Why should you watch this broadcast? Because we bring you the news, the real news. We report it honestly in a balanced way. We analyze the news for fact and bias and point out each. News, analysis, then commentary, which is not the news. Commentary is just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And therefore, that leads us to debate. By all means, feel free to check in and tell me what you think about anything we discuss on this broadcast. The news, the analysis, the commentary, anything. Give us a call. You can join us on the phone at 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172, or you can join us on the chat room. And by the way, we're doing something a little bit different these days. What we're doing is we are, instead of putting out one massive 3-hour podcast, we're doing individual hours. Okay. So we're doing individual hours so that you can use these as you see fit. In other words, you can check in on this second hour after you watch the first hour, which, by the way, was pretty good. We talked about the president's 60 Minutes interview and the hue and cry that went across the land from both conservatives and liberals when it came to what the president said on 60 Minutes last night. If you didn't see the 60 Minutes interview, it was like jaw-dropping. And we go through it completely for you on the Wells Report, so make sure you check that out. So this show emanates from Fort Worth, Texas. I've lived here for 16 years. I'm never leaving. This is my home. I love Texas, and I got to exactly the right place after wandering the country for decades, and I'm home. And so, that being said, you learn an awful lot about where you live, and I certainly have here. Let me explain just a little bit about what we deal with in Texas. We have a border with Mexico. Throughout not just decades, but centuries, Texas and Mexico have coexisted in very friendly ways. It's more contentious now because Mexico essentially has been allowing people to wander through their country to get to the United States. Mexico has spent decades exporting their poverty class to the United States of America, usually illegally. And what that means is that in this particular case, we have somewhere around 30 million illegals living in the United States, 30 million, all from the southern border. It's not just a Texas thing. It's New Mexico, Arizona, California. And these people come across in droves. It's about somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 interactions with these people, interdictions with people crossing the border illegally every month on this border. The president of the United States, as other presidents have done, is ignore the border, except for President Trump, who ran on an idea of closing the border down and started putting up fencing. This after trying to drag it through a Congress that was as intransigent as could possibly be. And I'm not just talking about Democrats, I'm talking about Republicans too. And so what ended up happening is that all of these people that were coming across our border were lured here because they could hear from the mayor of Chicago, mayor of New York, mayor of Detroit, mayor of Los Angeles, mayor of Denver, mayor of Portland, Oregon, mayor of Seattle, Washington, that they were all sanctuary cities. If people wanted to come to the United States, we didn't care whether they were breaking the law, you would find sanctuary in our cities. That's what you'd find. And so what ended up happening is that finally, after leaving the border open, which was something that only President Trump did anything about and then was immediately reversed when President Biden took office, what ended up happening is that finally the governors of these border states Not that any state in the union is not a border state at this point. Just read the newspapers about your state's fentanyl deaths, and you have just become a border state because the fentanyl crosses the border from Mexico into the United States. And somehow killing 100,000 people every year because of fentanyl hasn't closed the border down. That's another story for another day. But let's talk about what the president had been doing with all these people that were stacking up on the border and creating really bad opticals about thousands of people living under a bridge waiting for somebody to do something with them because they had crossed the border illegally. Well, what happened was the president of the United States started herding them onto buses and airplanes and flying them across the country and taking them cross country by bus to all of these communities and just dropping them off without telling the communities they were doing it. They just sent them away. Well, Republican governors said, wait a minute, if it works for them, it'll certainly work for us. But where do we send them all? Well, we know that there are sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Let's just send them there. And certainly, if they are sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, they've made preparations for illegal immigrants coming to their towns and cities and counties and states, right? Of course. Hey, if you're a sanctuary city, you certainly have to have some place for these people to land, right? Doesn't that make sense? Of course it does. Oh, yeah, they'll have jobs for you. They'll be taking care of you. Don't worry about a thing. And so they're being sent to these places, these sanctuary cities. 50 of them showed up at Martha's Vineyard, the playground for the ultra-wealthy in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is melting down, along with the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of New York. Mayors all over these sanctuary cities are saying, what are you sending these people here to us for? It's just a cynical political trick. It's inhuman that you'd send people to New York. Yeah, it is insane and inhuman to send people to New York for any reason. I know I've been there. People that live there are of a different breed. And anybody that would go there on purpose must be crazy. Anyway, that being said, that's just me. That's why I live in Texas. Yeah, I don't see any reason why I should live in New York, even though it's the number one broadcasting market in the United States, or Chicago, or Los Angeles, or Philadelphia. That's the top four. I happen to live in market number 5, and there's no reason for me to go any higher because those places are nuts. I have no interest in living in any of those places. I'm home. I live in Dallas-Fort Worth. Life is fine. And no, Dallas, Fort Worth, not sanctuary cities. They're illegal in Texas. And so what's going on with these people that went to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts? Well, Massachusetts is freaking out. Freaking out. It's in USA Today today. Authorities in Massachusetts said yesterday they have requested a federal human trafficking probe after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis boasted of sending about 50 Venezuelan migrants to Martha's Vineyard to shine a national spotlight on immigration issues. Quote, we are requesting that the Department of Justice open an investigation on to hold DeSantis and others accountable for these inhuman acts. Inhuman acts. I'm sorry. Did you declare yourself a sanctuary city? Yeah. It's not inhuman. No, this is political accountability. It's not a political stunt. It's political accountability. And you better be careful about this human trafficking jazz. Because the number one human trafficker in the United States is President Joe Biden and the Biden administration. There's no one even close. There's no one even close. The cartels, the coyotes, the rapers, accosters, all of those guys down south of the border, take away the rape and the drug smuggling. And what they're doing is human trafficking. Well, President Biden absolutely wipes them out when it comes to the volume of people that he has sent across our border and into our country's interior. So you be careful about whether or not you're going to hang human trafficking on Ron DeSantis, because if justice is blind, if there is equal application of justice, equal application of law, then President Biden is going to suffer the same fate, if you're successful, as Ron DeSantis. If not, if you can prosecute Ron DeSantis for human trafficking and you don't prosecute President Biden for human trafficking, which would mean, crazily enough, an impeachment, then what you have is more confirmation that the Department of Justice isn't the Department of Justice at all. It's the Department of Political Pacification. Yeah, what they do is they throw people who disagree with the current orthodoxy in American government in jail. And that's what they're doing. And that's just further confirmation of it. The two-tiered, hypocritical United States justice system. And it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. That turns the Biden administration, because all these people work for the Biden administration, that turns the Biden administration into the Biden regime. Is that what President Biden wants as his legacy? I don't think so. We are requesting the Department of Justice open an investigation to hold Ron DeSantis and others accountable for these inhuman acts. Not only is it morally criminal, there are legal implications around fraud, kidnapping, deprivation of liberty, and human trafficking. And President Biden is guilty of every single one of those things, if Ron DeSantis is. The president is also guilty if Governor Greg Abbott is. The president is guilty if Governor Doug Ducey is. This is terrible. This is the left imploding on itself. They say this is some sort of political stunt. They say it's inhuman to use people as political pawns. Well, what have you guys been doing? In order to get the Hispanic vote, what you've done essentially is you have decided to import as many Hispanics as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can. And the immigration system that they just decry as being broken, it's not broken. It's just unused. Well, that takes too long. Yeah, if you actually go through the current immigration system, it takes 7-10 years to get these people in here. We need them in here now, because the political imperative is not that these people come to the United States to do jobs that Americans won't do. They're coming to the United States to cast votes Americans won't cast. That's what's going on. And if you disagree, please, by all means, call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. This is hour number 2 of 3 podcast hours on the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can also chat with us in the chat room on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. And please, by all means, do. One of the most wonderful human beings I know is Jeannie Batchelor. She has asked a question that makes a great deal of sense. And what she has asked is doesn't human trafficking involve people being unwillingly transported for labor or sexual labor purposes? Typically, human trafficking is a description for those ensnared into the sex trade. Technically, what we're dealing with here is human smuggling, because the sexual component is not a part of this. Human smuggling involves getting specific individuals into the country for non-sexual purposes. Now, the thing about that is what would you do if you were, say, for example, I don't know, a leftist press trying to discourage anybody from doing something like holding leftist politicians accountable? Would you call it human trafficking or human smuggling? See, remember, anything that you accuse DeSantis or Abbott or Doug Ducey in Arizona of, the president is guilty of. So if you say human trafficking and you don't really talk about the fact that, well, that's the sex trade, if you say you can create some ambiguity there, but you really can't create an ambiguity over something called human smuggling. Is the president guilty of human smuggling? Absolutely, he is. He is absolutely guilty of human smuggling. And he knows that it's the wrong thing to do. How do we know that? It's real simple. The president does these flights in the middle of the night. He doesn't tell the municipalities where these people are coming. He doesn't tell these people that they're on the way. The good news about Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis and Governor Ducey is, well, they tell these places, these sanctuary cities, hey, you've got some people coming in to enjoy your sanctuary city. And then you listen to all of these hypocrites say, my God, it's inhuman. It's exploitation. It's this, it's that. Yes. Yes, it is. But it's actually none of those things. It's political accountability. And for those people that have waited for conservative spectrum politicians to finally find a spine, thank you, Ron DeSantis. Thank you, Governor Abbott, and thank you, Governor Ducey. Thank you very much. And it looks like it's getting even deeper. Ron DeSantis, for his part, has come up with a campaign ad. It's running statewide on Florida TV, digital starting today. The Florida governor has grabbed national headlines over the past week by flying Venezuelan migrants to the progressive bastion of Martha's Vineyard, a sanctuary city in Massachusetts. Here's what the commercial says. Florida resident Cayenne Michael, quote, my child was killed by someone who should not have been here. That's what happens when we have open borders. Yeah, we were able to go and meet Governor DeSantis. He said, I wanted to hear your son's story, to see the compassion in his eyes. I saw the concern. He wanted to make sure other lives were protected. Yeah. So what ended up happening is that this is just one story of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of stories of illegal migrants killing American citizens, either on purpose or by accident. So this is what it looks like when the outrageousness of the left is met with accountability from the right. And we need more of this, not less of this. Don't you think? I sure as hell do. This is hour number 2 of the Wells Report. There will be 3 hours of this broadcast, individual ones. Make sure you pass these along to your friends. Subscribe, please, by all means. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So we keep exposing in these United States, mostly inadvertently, unbelievable cases of degenerate, ascetic political hypocrisy from the left. And finally, the right is finding its voice and its spine. A lot of this started in Loudoun, Virginia, when parents revolted against the policies of the Loudoun County School District School Board. I mean, people showed up and told stories of their children being sexually assaulted by transgender kids in non-appropriate restroom settings. That guy got arrested for his protest. Now, what will happen? He went through court, et cetera, and it got so strange that the judge finally threw out the prosecution. This being said, we have schools that are in deep trouble because of leftist, what I consider to be craziness. As a parent of 4 boys, I can assure you that I was exposed to some of this, though not at the level that Loudoun, Virginia has been exposed to. And oh, by the way, living in Texas, we are kind of shielded by some of this, but certainly not all of it. School books being banned. This is from USA Today. Schools banned books 2,532 times since 2021. It's all part of a full-fledged movement, according to Aaliyah Wong of USA Today. I want you to listen to this, and I want you to listen for what's in it, and I want you to listen for what's not in it. Over the last year or so, books were banned at least 2,500 times by more than 130 school districts across 30-plus states, according to an analysis published today by PEN America, a free speech and literary organization. The unprecedented trend escalated throughout the spring and into the summer, according to PEN, which in the spring published a preliminary report documenting 1,586 book bans over the 9 months starting in July of 2021. More is the operative word for this report, PEN writes, comparing the latest analysis to a preliminary one. More books banned, more districts, more states, more students losing access to literature. That's a quote. The trend's proponents have also gotten more savvy and more creative in their book challenging strategies. Over the 2021-2022 school year, what started as modest school-level activity to challenge and remove books in schools grew to a full-fledged social and political movement, said PEN. That movement, according to that organization, has been powered by at least 50 activist groups, as well as politicians who have pressured or chilled schools into restricting children's access to certain books. Have you discovered what's missing yet? Large majorities of Americans oppose book bans, at least 70% of both Democrats and Republicans, according to one poll. True. In a vacuum, nobody wants books to be banned. In a vacuum. What you're missing is that these are books that are banned in school libraries because of what they expose our children to. That's missing in this. PEN attributes the movement largely to the dozens of groups, many self-described as parents' rights organizations, that have often disseminated lists of books they argue aren't appropriate for school children and mobilized members to testify at school board meetings. At the forefront of these efforts are 8 organizations that together comprise 300 or more local or regional chapters, according to the PEN analysis. These national groups include, listen to this, Moms for Liberty, U.S. Parents Involved in Education, No Left Turn in Education, and parents' rights in education. Do those sound like extremist groups to you? You know what? They sound not just as self-described parents' organizations or parents' rights organizations. They sound like parents' rights organizations to me. Why would they throw the sneering self-described? Well, because they're trying to make these people the issue. And once again, we're about halfway through the article so far, and there's still something glaringly missing. All in all, parents' rights groups, most of which have formed since 2021, played a role in at least half the book bans during the school year. Penn defines a book ban as any action taken against a book resulting from community requests, administrative decisions, or legislation targeting its content leads to it being removed or otherwise restricted. And according to Penn, they're developing new tactics for restricting book access. For example, some have taken to scrutinizing and interfering in district book purchases or digital library apps. Lawmakers and other politicians are also helped driving the challenges through legislation or policy changes that implicate books. According to Penn, roughly 40% of the bans documented during the 2021-2022 school year are connected to political pressure exerted by state officials or elected lawmakers. What's missing? Haven't heard about it yet, have you? You've just heard about how terrible this book banning is. Perhaps the most prominent example, Texas State Rep Matt Krause, a Republican who last fall distributed a list of roughly 850 books he wanted schools to review for potential removal from shelves. The unprecedented number of challenges we're seeing already this year reflects coordinated national efforts to silence marginalized or historically underrepresented voices and deprive all of us, young people in particular, of the chance to explore a world beyond the confines of personal experience, said Lisa Kanani Opua Paleo Lozada, the president of the American Library Association. Between July 1st and June 22nd, or June 30th, 2022, this is July 1st, 2021, and June 30th, 2022, according to Penn, 2,532 book bans were enacted, affecting 1,648 unique titles. Many titles were banned in more than one district. Most of the bans involved books that were indefinitely or temporarily removed from shelves, pending investigations or reviews. The American Library Association last Friday published a preliminary analysis documenting attempts to ban or restrict library resources between January 1st and August 31st. 70% of the 681 attempts documented during that period targeted multiple titles. What's missing? Okay, so we're more than 2/3 of the way through the story. What's missing? The book titles. The book titles. Supporters of the book bans often argue the titles they're challenging are too obscene or mature for young readers. The most targeted title by far is Maya Kobabe's graphic novel Gender Queer, a Memoir. Is this what we want elementary and junior high and even high school kids to be accessing in their school libraries? Gender Queer, a Memoir? How about All Boys Aren't Blue? So far, what we've talked about is the joys of homosexuality. And with All Boys Aren't Blue, now what we're doing is we're talking about how all boys aren't necessarily male. Some are female. In other words, during the most confusing time for any human being, which is puberty, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce gender confusion and root for the expansion of transgenderism in our schools. And these people are very, very concerned that there are book bans, that these books are being banned. Remember, these books are literature. Really? They're literature, huh? How many of these books are, if they're literature, how many of these books are on the New York Times bestseller list? The answer is none of them. Not one of them. Also on the list, Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope. This is about racism in the United States. The Bluest Eye, about an African American girl who prays that her eyes would turn blue because she thinks that white, blonde haired kids are just so beautiful. She wants to be one. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. That's the story of a mixed race couple in school, high school, being stopped by a police officer and being accosted under those circumstances. Is that what we want to teach our kids? That the police are racist, etc.? The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, Lawn Boy, all about racism? Yeah, since the kids don't really care about racism, what we have to do is we have to teach them about it so that we can continue exploiting racism in the United States. Because if you can't actually have a racist country if there are no racists. So, since we're losing racists because of what? Enlightenment? Societal maturity? The realization that everybody really is everybody, which is what we figured out in the 70s, for crying out loud. If we don't have racists, well, we're going to have to create them again, aren't we? So what we do is we're going to teach African American kids that they're suppressed, repressed. And we're going to teach white kids that they have white privilege just because they're white. So we're going to regenerate racism so we have something to complain about. This is sick. This is sickness. This is a society being engineered by people who want to destroy it. And those people who want to defend it are somehow book banners? Is that what we're doing here? The answer is absolutely, unequivocally, yes. That is exactly what we're doing. It is high time that we stop this. Are these books appropriate? I suppose if a parent wants their kids to have these books, they can go right down to the bookstore and they can buy them. Here's a book for you. Teaches you about how mixed race couples in school can get accosted by police officers and bad things ensue. Teaches you how to hate police officers or be afraid of them. Yeah. No, the answer is garbage. This is garbage. Am I one of those reading, writing, and arithmetic guys? No. As a matter of fact, I'm a fine arts major. Always have been. Well, until 9/11/2001, when I became a newsman. This is not fine art. This is information brokerage. Except the difference is, I'm not doing what USA Today is doing. Spending most of an article decrying the fact that there are these monolithic, single-minded, non-enlightened barbarians trying to burn or ban books, literature, in fact. I'm sorry, genderqueer, a memoir is not literature. It is a personal journey story of someone who has a different lifestyle than the vast majority of people. And what we're doing is we're trying to train everybody that is just a perfectly fine lifestyle. By the way, it is a perfectly fine lifestyle. As far as I'm concerned, quite all right. I have no problem with it whatsoever. But making that the cause du jour to inculcate gender issues, race issues, homosexual issues, LGBTQRSTUV, they keep adding initials. It's LGBTQIA plus now. Because they don't know where to stop. Here's where to stop. Teach the kids what they need to know, not what politicians think they should know. not what social engineers need them to know so their social engineering can take some sort of hold to alter the United States into something more befitting what? A dystopian nightmare? Because it sure looks an awful lot like dystopian nightmares to me. Especially since we know that wherever anybody does any of this stuff that we're currently seeing in the United States, dystopian nightmares ensue. It's not like this is rocket science. All you got to do is read a history book, a real history book, and not the garbage they're giving our kids. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Like I said, it appears as though the people of the right political spectrum, in other words, the spectrum of the right, conservative politics, it appears as though they're finding their voice, they're finding their spine. In the meantime, the political machine journalistic effort is savaging them at every turn. Rex Hupke from USA Today writes the following: if Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia has his way, transgender students in Virginia will be forced to use bathrooms that don't align with their gender identity. They will have to file legal documents if they want to change names or pronouns on school documents. Even if a student does provide name change or pronoun change documentation, teachers will not be required to address the student by the new name or pronouns. Teachers might be required to out transgender students to their parents. I'm sorry. Do you honestly believe that there are transgender students out there that their parents are unaware that they're transgender? And why is that the latest cause celeb, sir? The new guidelines issued last Friday are some of the most heartless rules that Rex Hupke has seen bubble up from right-wing cruelty cauldron. From the right-wing cruelty cauldron. Really? Dramatic, shall we say? They will be enacted in school districts across the state if approved by Virginia's Superintendent of Public Instruction following a 30-day comment period. Governor Youngkin, along with other Republicans in states across the country, are targeting a small demographic of children who already struggle with inordinately high suicide rates. He's bending over backwards to make their lives measurably worse, to make them feel shunned, and he's doing it to solve the comfort and, in some cases, hatred of adults who don't have inordinately high suicide rates and whose lives will be just fine regardless. So, in other words, Mr. Hupke, we should reduce the entire society to the fragility of someone who has gender dysphoria. Everyone needs to cater to the fragility of the gender dysphoric. Everyone. And anybody who does not is obviously contributing to the right-wing cruelty cauldron. You see, in this column, Mr. Hupke points out that this is a relatively small dynamic. It is a relatively small dynamic. There are not a lot of kids that are this way. And yes, there's all kinds of school bullying going on with people that are outside the norm. I had red hair. And because my hair was red, I was bullied and castigated and so on and so on. Absolutely true. And so, was I helped out? No. Why? Well, because I wasn't gay or because I didn't dress in gender inappropriate clothes. And so what ended up happening was my bullying was just fine because, well, I wasn't in a selected group that should be protected. I was just a typical red-haired white guy. That all went well until I absolutely flattened somebody that was bullying me, and suddenly I was being threatened with being thrown out of high school. That was the first time I ever got in the face of the dean of the high school, and I said, "Excuse me, but I've been in this office a half a dozen times complaining about being bullied. It seems as though in this particular school, what really needs to happen is that if you are bullied, you need to bully back." It was the first time I realized I could outthink someone in authority at a high school. And I said, "By all means, suspend me. I and my parents will be back later this afternoon. And if that doesn't work, then we'll come back later accompanied by our lawyer." And you know what happened next? He handed me a pass, said, "Go back to class." People are bullied in school. People that are transgender. People that are gay. People that are in a protected group. They need those people to be bullied so that they can do something about bullying transgender LGBTQ youth. But they really don't care about bullying. If it wasn't for bullying, they wouldn't have an excuse to inflict all of this on every kid in our school, reducing the entire society to the fragility of the most, vulnerable. There are a lot of things that you can cater to when you're dealing with kids. You can. It's happened before. Remember the famous peanut allergy stories? Where two parents and one kid who's allergic to peanut allergies changes the entire menu of a school. Kids can't have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because their kid might be exposed. The entire situation turns on its head. Well, that's just one of the things that can be used in this way. We cannot reduce the entire society to the fragility, to the emotional fragility of these people who don't believe they are who they are. It's not society's fault. And we shouldn't be stomped on as if it was. This is the Wells Report. If you disagree, give me a buzz. See you next hour. Okay. See you next hour. That's the end.